By Amplified Unit, top of the morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, salute. It is time to wake up, get up, and get amplified. Just hours before WWE Smackdown hits the airwaves, and BC coming at you with a pre-record. We have a lot to discuss just before SmackDown. We're going to talk a top WWE talent, doubling down on how he truly feels about a top AEW talent. This is not the first time he has spoken on this, and now he's just doubling down. We're going to get to that. And what has just crossed, I start off, I can't help but laugh. What has just broke is that ISO-S Capital co-founders, this just hit, guys. This is breaking news. ISO-S Capital co-founders George Barrios and Michelle Wilson are partnering with Carmelo Anthony, former New York Knick Carmelo Anthony, to launch ISO-S 7 Sports Investments. Now, if you don't know who George Barrios and Michelle Wilson are, well, those are the cronies for Vince McMahon for years and years. The right-hand man and left-hand woman of Vince McMahon is Barrios and Michelle Wilson. Top of the heap. Those were his financial gurus. Those were the henchmen / woman. And they left WWE during one of many crazy time periods for the company. They left. Word was they got Das Boot. They got a huge severance package, and then they went and formed their own company. It's almost like they double dipped. It's almost like Vince McMahon took very good care of them through a loophole. We'll give you a ton of money on the way out. All the money you've already earned from us. We'll give you more on top of that because you were going to leave anyway. It looks like they played the system. And then when Vince went away for just a few months, he put his little puppeteer group in there. Paul 3H's, Levesque, Stephanie McMahon, Nick Khan. Of course, this was all just so Vince could keep pulling the strings. He put his family in there, some more right-hand individuals. And when Vince was ready to come back, when he thought the smoke had settled, the dust had cleared, Vince comes right back. BC told you that was going to happen. That's exactly what happened. Vince came storming back. And he didn't come alone. Vince came back, he fired some of those boardroom members, those board of directors, and he brought back George Barrios and Michelle Wilson. Just recently, guys. Vince did not come back alone. So they got all that money, they came right back, and they're sitting pretty on the board. So anyway, that's who Barrios and Wilson is. Now they're forming this huge sports investment company with Carmelo Anthony. Wouldn't it be crazy to think? Would it be crazy to think? Is it that far-fetched? Is it that ludicrous to think that Vince McMahon is going to attempt to buy out his own company just so he could take it private and have even more control back of the company? And the lead investors would be ISO-S 7 Sports Investments, led by Vince McMahon, Barrios, Wilson, and Carmelo Anthony. I'm pretty sure Nick Khan would have a piece of the pie. Probably Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would have a big piece of the pie. There would be a lot of investors in this. Vince isn't just going to put down the $7 billion up front, but the point is it that crazy to think that all of these puzzle pieces are starting to be put where they belong? And when you take a step back from the puzzle, the picture is becoming clearer and clearer. What if this is all for a buyout? And Vince is going to have his own company bought out, take it private. And if you thought Vince had power before, oh, step back, Jack. It's a whole new ball game with VKM. He's going to have even more power. Anyway, it's all just speculation. I don't like to speculate on the channel, but Barrios and Wilson just came back to WWE, sitting pretty on the board. Now they launched this huge sports investment company firm. Man, the money they're going to be pouring in, the money that they already have. And you know more people are going to be added on to this huge mega group. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. What if it's not a traditional buyout to a Comcast or Walt Disney or such. What if they're just doing their own buyout? Speaking of Walt Disney, guys, a lot of people are calling this big deal was just made between AEW and ESPN, of course, owned by Walt Disney and Disney World, Disney Pictures, Disney Plus. A lot of people are indifferent on the Disney company. A lot of people don't like the Disney company, but they are now doing business with AEW and vice versa. AEW announced a TV deal in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands with ESPN. That begins roughly February 16th. So that would be Thursday. I don't know what programming is on a Thursday for AEW. But I also don't live in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. Now, they've already had a contract. I believe Fight TV was with them, correct? So this would just be something on top of that or replacing. So it's not like they didn't have any type of agreement in those areas, guys. So it's not that big of a deal on that front. ESPN is obviously going to be a bigger entity that they're working with. But when you look at the details of this, Tony Khan did not get a pretty good deal on this, man. It looked like he was just trying to get a deal done, and ESPN walked away like bandits here, basically for pennies on the dollar. And this tells us that Tony Khan is still up in those development stages of trying to earn real money with AEW. To this day, 4 years later, Tony Khan fully admits this many times, to his credit. He's not trying to hide the fact that AEW has not actually earned real revenue yet. He was hoping by the end of year 3. We're now into year 4. There's still no real revenue. He's hoping the next big media rights deal for North America will really kick into high gear and get him some revenue. But that's still down the line. And right now, AEW Dynamite's going backwards in the ratings. Rampage is non-existent right now, about to hit the 300,000s. They were just at 406,000. So they're going backwards, as if that's even possible. So if they want a big TV rights deal, they might want to go into the other direction. The thing they have working for them is on Wednesday nights, there's not real big competition, man. Once basketball or something like that is done, MTV Challenge is in its final week next week, I believe. And those are the only things that really beat them last week, for instance. Basketball and MTV Challenge. You get rid of them, and maybe they start pulling in 950,000 a week again, which is their hierarchy of their niche audience. Their niche runs between 850 to 950,000. Well, this week for AEW, they only pulled 899. So they're going backwards. 901 last week, 899,000 this week. You really can't go any farther back, man. You're going to be at the beginning of your niche. Or at least the beginning of your highest spot of the niche, 850 to 950. You're going backwards toward the beginning of that, 850. You want to be at least at that 950. Talk about $1 million. So the deal with ESPN, yeah, it sounds good because it's ESPN. But if you look at the deal, man, ESPN walked away like bandits here. And I'm pretty sure Tony Khan is just happy to be available in the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, and Australia. So he's going to take the upfront loss and hope for the best in the future. In the next deal, Tony Khan hopes to make it a lot better. But it's not that big of a deal as people are making it. I think people are thinking ESPN, but it has nothing to do with the United States, Canada, any North American countries like that. It has nothing to do with actual revenue that Tony Khan is bringing in. He already had a deal in place with another entity in those areas anyway. So it's not that big. I'm not trying to undervalue it. There's just not really substance to the deal if you really look into it. And again, I think he's hoping that by the end of this year, it'll look much better and the next deal will be much more lucrative. Now, on that same front, before I get to Rollins and Punk, which I know you guys want to get to, I talked in great length in yesterday's members-only live stream of the ratings for Dynamite this past week, 899,000, and Smackdown, which garnered near 2.4 million viewers, and an absolutely wild uptick during Q8, the final segment. Over 200,000 viewers more than how you started SmackDown. You rarely, if ever, see that kind of upward tick by the end of the show anymore in wrestling. You don't see it. So it was huge. But I didn't actually show you guys the quarterlies for AEW, and I'm all about facts on the channel, so I want to do my due diligence. For those that didn't catch the quarterlies, because we did not post them on this channel, and thanks to the fine folks at WrestleNomics, it makes it a lot easier for BC to do this. I would like to put up those quarterlies for Dynamite just so I can show you guys why this is not good for AEW. This is not dogging them. This is not hoping they do bad. We hope they do good. We hope that people in that company would listen and do better, right? Put more stories into your show so more people will be interested, invested, and care about the show. But what you see here, guys, for Dynamite is just a consistent drop-off, except for Q5, which is the top of the second hour. A lot of times you'll see a new hour collect a bigger audience, right? A lot of shows will end and somebody will say, hey, you know what? I'm going to see what else is on, right? And a lot of people do that. What else is on? I'm not just going to shut the TV off because it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to see what else is on. So they flick through and they come across AEW, and maybe they see a recognizable face like Bryan Danielson because he was on that Q5. But you guys see the trajectory, and it's just not good from the start of the show to the end of the show. For instance, you're looking at what? 880, 980, almost 250,000 viewer drop. 980, 1,000, what do you got? 31, 129, something like that. 200,019, right? 219,000 maybe. I don't know. My fucking math is a little off. Let's go through Q1. Q1, you start off with 1,049,000. And by Q2, you've lost 49,000 viewers, guys. And that's just that's literally just 49,000 people clicking in at the beginning and then deciding, no, this isn't for me. And by the time you go to Q2 to Q3, you lost 59,000 more viewers, guys. And that was the gauntlet match with Ricky Starks, losing another 59,000. And by Q4, you lost another 72,000. That was the last 7.5 minutes of the gauntlet match. And then Danielson and Take a Shitta's backstage angle. That lost 72,000 more. So if you look between Q2 through Q4, you lost 131,000 viewers, guys. Now, at the top of the hour for Q5, Danielson and Roosh were able to get back 54,000 viewers. But by the end of the match in Q6 and the start of the Elite versus AR Fox and Top Flight 6-man tag, you had dropped 75,000 viewers. Wow. Q5 to Q6. The end of the Danielson-Roosh match and the beginning of the 6-man tag with the Elite lost 75,000 viewers in Q6. And by the time you went Q6 to Q7, you had lost another 69,000 viewers, guys. That was the last 9.5 minutes of the 6-man tag Elite versus AR Fox Top Flight match. That tells you that fans do not give a shit about 6-man tags. They don't want to see a circus. If there's no real story being told, no reason to care, if somebody's just flicking through, they're seeing an absolute circus in that ring because AEW especially does not adhere to any type of tag team rules. They don't care if everybody's in the ring all at once, causing absolute chaos. The referee sits in the corner, he waves his arms like he's actually doing something, moves his lips like he's actually saying something, all the while nobody is giving a shit about the ref. He looks like a joke. And there's only so much pinball nonstop action that you can do before people are going to get tired of it. They want to see in-ring psychology. They want to see more selling. Guys, as much of a draw as the Elite once was, I think it's clear to say, unfortunately, because I like Omega, actually. I think the Bucks should have been booked much better in AEW. I think Omega was botched 16 different times in AEW. It pains me to say this, but when you look at that entire match through 2 segments, Q6 and Q7, the Elite was a big reason why you lost a collective 144,000 viewers in just 2 segments. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying that. But they lost 144,000 viewers in those 2 segments for that 6-man tag. Some of that in that Q6 was Danielson Rush's finish. But by the time you got to Q8, for a main event, you only went up 925 viewers. 1,000 viewers is what it's rounded up to. And that's not just the Elite's fault, obviously, or AR Fox or Top Flight. That's the Acclaimed versus the Guns in the main event. That's just not a main event a lot of people are going to care about. And then you botched, and you absolutely made a stupid decision for the ages, and you put the titles on the Gun Club, Austin and Colt. You took them away, one of the hottest acts, the Acclaimed. And for what? To play hot potato? To try to get the FTR back, to beat Austin and Colt? When even the AEW tried and true fan base is absolutely befuddled by a Tony Khan decision, you know that it was a really wrong decision. And that's what happened. Most of the AEW diehard group is absolutely befuddled by that call. There's no justification. Even if an Acclaimed member was a little bit injured, that's not the way you go about it. You're a month away from a pay-per-view, and one of your hottest acts just drops the titles like that with only 780,000 viewers watching by the end of the show. Was that really worth it? You didn't come anywhere near popping a rating. So again, guys, by the end of the show, to the top of the show, to the end of the show, you lost 880, 980, 220, 269,000 viewers. Wow! 269,000 viewers. And you were in a downward trend the entire night. Even your 18 to 49 demo, you started at a 452, and by the end of it, you lost over 100,000 out of 350. And that's your core audience, right? That's the ones you're really looking for. The 18 to 49 diehard AEW fan. Oh, well, by the end of the show, only 2 hours later, over 100,000. You only had just over 400,000 to begin with. Nearly a quarter of that said, check ya, I'm out. So, guys, that's what I wanted to show you. I wasn't able to do that in the live stream yesterday. That's AEW. Now, I want you to see that. I'll put a side-by-side if you want. The comparison to Smackdown, which is actually right now a good show. And this is not our opinions, guys, right? Because you can have that. You can think that was the best Dynamite of all time if you want. That's your prerogative. That's your opinion. You can think Smackdown was great this week or absolutely horrible. That's our opinions, if we like something or not, if we think it's good, if we think it's great, if we thought it was horrible. Those are opinions. Everyone deserves that, right? And we all got them. Favorite food, what we love, what we don't. Favorite movie, what we love, what we don't. And a lot of our answers are going to be different. But the facts tell us, numbers, trends, statistics, metrics, tells us that AEW was not a good show this week. It's not our opinions. Some of you may have loved it. Some of you may have hated it. But this was just not a good show. The numbers tell us that, right? All we have is facts to go by. And it tells you that the majority of the world just said, no, that's not a good wrestling show. Try again next week. Now, for SmackDown, the facts tell us, the trends, the metrics, the numbers. It tells us that SmackDown was a really good show this week. Because if you look at SmackDown, and I'll just start right from and I'll make this quick because I went over this a little bit yesterday. But you look at SmackDown throughout the 2 hours, guys, it's basically a steady trend. A steady trend until you get maybe Q6, and then you start to see the uptick for Q7, and of course Q8 just absolutely blows everything out of the water. But that is a near straight line when you're talking about pro wrestling. It doesn't get that much better than that other than an exact straight line. And that's nearly impossible. That would be pretty outrageous. Pretty cool to see if that was the case. But this is a very straight line for the most part. You started out 2.385 million, okay? And you went up 5,000 for Q2. You dropped a little bit for Q3. You went up for Q4. Again, top of the hour. I tell you guys this all the time. That was the end of the Q3 top of the hour when they were doing the Charlotte Flair, Sonya Deville thing. So I'm sure Charlotte Flair fans are going to love that, right? She is a draw. But you were also now tipping into the Bloodline and the anticipation for them and Sami Zayn. So they kind of milked together with that 2-4 and 2-3-8-5 near that 2-4. So Q4, Q5, that was a lot to do with the Bloodline. But I don't want to discredit Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville. Absolutely not. They got a nice charge in that Q4. And then Q5, again, was roughly right around that 15, 30, maybe 28,000 drop. It was not until you got to Q6, which was the big drop. That was over 100,000 viewers checked out for the Viking Raiders and the Brawling Brutes. I could have told you that. Nobody's going to care about that shit. And that's a shame, man. Especially because you had Sheamus out there, Drew McIntyre, or at least that video package as well, from what I recall. So it's just a shame that 100,000 people checked out for that. Once you got the Q7, you went up 3,000. You weren't going to go up that much. It's Natalya versus Zelina Vega versus Shayna Baszler versus Shotzi. It's a little bit of a circus. You're not going to gain that much of an audience back. But when you hit Q8, it was Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Bloodline, that whole angle. Guys, you rarely see this in professional wrestling and trust me, I see ratings for every show for years and years. Before ratings were talked about heavily, BC was studying and dissecting numbers and ratings. And you don't see this type of a jump. You just don't. I mean, it's shocking to even see it. Q8 pulled in a 2,588, 2,588,000, basically a 2.6. 2.6 when you started under a 2.4. Over 200,000 viewers tuned in for the end of the show, more than the start. That never happens. Or at least very rarely, and when it does, it's not by that much. If you ever wondered how much Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, the Bloodline storyline, how captivating it is, this should shock the hell out of you, because it is immaculate. And that helped Smackdown drastically hit to near a 2.4 yet again this week. And this is what I mean. You put together a show that can remain consistent throughout, and then you have those one or two segments that absolutely catapult in the uptick way. Up north, you go upwards, man. And that is going to help the care in your show. A reason why you have to tune in next week. People are invested with the Bloodline and Sami Zayn. Maybe they want to see what happens next with Bray Wyatt. Maybe they are Charlie Flair fans and they want to see what's next with her. Who knows? She had a good Q4. Again, I think that was anticipation for Q5 in the Bloodline, but it was a good Q4. But there's enough on the show that keeps people in tune. And that's something that Monday Night Raw doesn't do, and it's something that AEW doesn't do. Right now, SmackDown, this is not an opinion, guys. You can have your opinion on what you think is the best show, what you think is the best company. That's totally fine, and it's awesome. But when it comes to factually, SmackDown is the best show in pro wrestling right now because the numbers tell us that. It brings in the most people. Now, you say, well, BC, that's Fox. I'm not even just saying viewership number-wise, guys, and that's not often I say that. But I'm saying by looking at how the numbers flow, it stays consistent and it catapults upwards. You don't see that with the numbers. That's why BC says this show is absolutely next level right now. You add in one or two more really good storylines like they just had with Bray and LA Knight, for instance, and now that's over, they're going to have to fill that void. But if you put in two more really good storylines and you still keep rocking with Sami, the Bloodline, Roman, this show could honestly start fucking with 2.7, 2.8 rating. And that may sound outrageous, but it's actually not. You can actually get 400,000 more viewers with just a couple more really good storylines. So I wanted to put that side by side to show you guys one show is not good. Now, they don't really do quarterly breakdowns like this. Nobody in the industry, not even WrestleNomics and Brandon Thurston, not even them can really get a hold because there's so many moving parts. But if I could do Monday Night Raw, that would be a pretty ugly roller coaster as well, quarterly number-wise. So Raw's in the same boat as AEW. You know, they really got to find their footing because SmackDown is clearly an A show and beyond. They just have their shit together. It's better with a 2-hour format than 3 hours on Raw, I understand, but AEW is 2 hours. No reason AEW can't be fucking slaughtering the competition right now. Absolutely crushing the game. And it's just he doesn't want to understand. Tony Khan thinks it's just match after match after match after match after match. Build your video library and that's it. One day have a streaming service. He's got to remember, you're going to start losing people by the week in viewership. In your own demo, your own diehard fan base, your own tried and trues, if you don't start giving them a reason to care. AEW had 899,000 viewers, man. They're back into the 800,000s. Smackdown is fucking with near 2.5 mil. 2.6 almost in the final segment, Q8. Now, I understand you're a company only 4 years old, but I mean, you're talking about 3 times the viewership. I understand it's Fox and TBS, but look at the trends throughout the night. One goes upwards, the other one consistently goes downwards, and that's every single week for AEW. So I wanted to show the quarterlies on both companies because I only really showed, it was kind of like a mock-up diagram of SmackDown in yesterday's stream, and I didn't show any for AEW, so I did want you guys to catch that. Because again, if I can show you the facts, it's better for BC and the AMP unit to really dissect this together. So, that being said, let's get over to the story at hand, what you guys really want to talk about, right? Seth Rollins, CM Punk. Now, you guys remember the original comments last week when he was asked about CM Punk. Seth Rollins came right out and he said, just go away, you're a cancer to the industry, nobody wants you, you're a problem wherever you go. He pretty much hit Phil Brooks very hard. Now a lot of people started saying maybe it's a storyline, BC. It's just a storyline. But nobody stopped to think there is no. He's not a part of WWE. Phil Brooks is not a part. Why would Seth Rollins start setting up a storyline? Brooks is not going there. Why would he just start smashing Brooks in a storyline when Brooks already has his hands full with AEW chatter and people not being happy with him? And if there was a storyline with AEW, that's where it would stay. Rollins wouldn't start going into business with him and Punk. And we know that there was a falling out between the two. They were semi-close, and Rollins backs that statement up in his new comments. But there was a huge falling out, and Phil Brooks started really getting paranoid and keeping his circle smaller and cut out a lot of people. So that was a big polarizing topic, right? Rollins and what he said about Punk and, oh, don't worry, guys, he's in character. Well, it's still a shoot, man. It's okay for him to have feelings. I don't know why people would be upset with Seth Rollins if he just doesn't like Phil Brooks. I don't see why that would. Why would you not like Seth Rollins or be pissed off at Rollins because he just doesn't like Brooks? A lot of people don't like Brooks. A lot of people don't think he has a good attitude. A lot of people think that he's kind of toxic to locker rooms. That's their prerogative. So he was asked again, okay, recently. Now, that was last week. Now, this week he was asked yet again. And this was, let me try to get the actual, I think this was Fox Sports Radio. He was doing an interview, Seth Rollins, and asked about Punk. Now, at first, I love how he did this because we're hearing rumblings, and this should be the case, that Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul is going to be the matchup for WrestleMania. Now, you have nothing for Rollins anyway. He's not going to be taking on Roman Reigns for a championship at Mania. It's going to be Cody and Reigns, and that's what it should be. If there is a second match, because there is 2 nights of Mania, I would split up the titles, and even if you're not going to have a title match, I would still have Roman fight twice. One on WrestleMania Night 1, once on WrestleMania Night 2, and one would be Cody for the title, obviously, or titles. And then the other match should be Sami Zayn if you're not going to be able to get The Rock. Don't pay Stone Cold all this money just to replace The Rock. It would be Cody and it would be Sami. You could have another match after Elimination Chamber, end that the right way, and then have them take on each other. Part 2, run it back at Mania. So I do believe Roman should be pulling double duty, but it's not going to be Rollins. It doesn't make sense. So Roman should be doing double duty at Mania. It should not be Rollins. That's number 1. Number 2, you're not going to have Rollins going for the U.S. title all throughout the rest of February, even though that's what it seems like. He's still doing this Elimination Chamber. Rollins has been playing around with the U.S. title all of 2022, now all of 2023. It's going to be time to move on from that. I understand your world champion doesn't want to work Mondays and he's got both titles captive, but this is making Rollins look really foolish. At Elimination Chamber, that's got to be it. Move him on from that. I don't even care if it has nothing to do with a title. Just move Rollins and Lashley away from anything to do with that damn U.S. title. So it's not going to be Theory and Rollins at Mania. I would hope not, for the 97th time. So it's going to be an exhibition match for Rollins. Okay, so Logan Paul, man. This makes sense. They had the shake-up in the Rumble. They've been chattering back and forth a little bit, flapping their gums at one another. This would be the match. Could you imagine how good the match would be if you flop a storyline on top of it, right? Just fucking throw it on top of what is already going to be a good match, which is what we always ask for. Just give us a reason to care, right? We know we can get good matches. Give us a story with it. Now, if you do this very pristinely, technical mishap, that's the good thing about a pre-record. We can take that right out in editing. But where were we? Oh, yeah. So you have Rollins and Logan Paul. That's going to be a good match anyway. If you put a nice fresh coat of paint on that, if you really put a pristine story on top of it like a cherry on a sundae, Logan Paul and Seth Rollins could be something to look forward to at WrestleMania. No question. Look at what Roman and Logan did in an exhibition. Rollins and Logan, you could argue, would be a better matchup. Again, with a story on top of it like a cherry on a sundae. This could be something good. I'm actually interested in Logan Paul and Rollins already. You know, it's sitting in their lap should they choose to do that. So, back to the Punk question that Rollins was asked. How he really feels about Punk and the comments that he made. I like how Rollins at first tied it in to an actual storyline with Logan Paul, or at least a possible one for Mania. He says, look, this is a quote about CM Punk. Look, the bottom line is, it's the same thing as with Logan Paul. Punk and Logan Paul are 2 different personalities, but they're both as selfish as it comes. If you're not going to help, then I don't want you to be a part of our industry. I don't want you to be a part of our company, and that's all there is to it. Now, again, the big report is that it's going to be Logan Paul and Rollins. So that part was absolutely storyline. I love how he took how I feel he truly feels about Punk, but he meshed it with a real story that he's going to have with Logan Paul. So I like that. After he was done conducting business for a possible Logan Paul feud for Mania, he then elaborates on his true feelings with Punk. Rollins says this about Punk, and I quote, I'll end it on a positive note with him, meaning Punk. That guy has given my career so much that it pains me to have to say bad things about him because he helped me out. He really did. He's been a good guy to me for a lot of my career. But for whatever reason, the past maybe 6 or 7 years, he's just in a different headspace, and we're just not on the same page. To see what he's done and taken, and it's always about him. I'm just not a fan anymore. I'm not a fan. There's a place for him, man. He has a lot to give. I just wish his head was in the right spot. End quote. Guys, that's not just being in character. That's not just like having fun and letting people speculate, right? Maybe it's a work. That sounds like as true of a feeling as imaginable. He is saying, it pains me to say anything bad about Punk. Punk helped me throughout my career at first. But he says the last 6 to 7 years, this dude is in left field with a hockey stick. Like his head's, nobody knows where his head's even at. He's just not in it anymore. He says, and I quote, he's in a different headspace and we're not on the same page to see what he's done in the last 6 to 7 years and taken, and it's just always about him. I'm not a fan of his anymore. I'm not a fan. There's a place for him, he says, guys. He says there's a place for him still. He's got a lot still to give. I just wish his head was in the right spot. I believe Rollins is not the only one. You think they don't talk about this in the locker room? In WWE and AEW. You think this is not talked about? You remember Corey Graves was one of Punk's good friends. I don't know about best. I don't know him that good. But Corey Graves has told stories about him and Punk were close, and he doesn't even know who Punk is anymore. Like Punk just totally got weird as fuck, secluded himself in the smallest of circles, trusted nobody, and shied away a lot of his good friends, or at least they thought they were good friends of Punk. So Corey Graves said that a while back, and he was friends with Punk. I remember that it was a few years ago, and a lot of people like confirmed that and like the status or whatever. They were in agreement. And now here we are years later, 2023, and you got people like Rollins saying the same exact thing. It's not the same Punk that I used to know. And BC said it on this channel for so long. I said that, guys. Like, we saw the transformation of Punk over the years. He was getting more and more bitter. Now you say, well, yeah, WWE did that to him. You don't want to get that fucking bitter, guys. You don't want it to get to that fucking level that you're so unhappy it's affecting your own fucking health. It's affecting your will, and that's what happened with Punk. He got so bitter, he was not happy anymore. He started to shit on pro wrestling, and doing so, he shit on fans, he shit on his fellow wrestlers, and of course they were not going to take too kindly to that. So when he got to AEW, I was the first one on the channel. We never saw eye to eye, but I said, all right, looks like he's got a smile back, like Shawn Michaels. He found his smile. You guys remember that storyline? Shawn Michaels had to go away because he was just in a bad headspace, and when he came back, he found his smile. You know, it looked like Punk found his smile, man, but there was something off. You know, his promos, it was not the old school Phil Brooks CM Punk, right? He got some good ones in there with MJF. Maybe Kingston was one of them, I believe. So there were some good ones, but it wasn't like what we were waiting for. It wasn't that fucking savage Punk, and his wrestling was absolutely atrocious. I'm not just talking about the atrocity that he had with Hangman Page. That was just sad. But his wrestling he was never the most athletic. He was never anywhere near what he called himself, the best in the world. We know that. He was never athletic, and he was always a sloppy wrestler. But in AEW, man, it was really rough, and it was worse than ring rust. And then he started getting injured a lot. Like serious injuries. Jumping into the crowd, he breaks his leg or some shit. Pulls a tendon. Who knows? Then he fucking, on that last match, AEW All Out, what'd he do? A tendon in his arm or something? Another big injury that kept him out for months. 45 years old-ish. His body's breaking down. He has nothing left to give, guys. His body's breaking down. You can see in his face, he's just not happy. He told you that in the AEW All Out media scrum that got him in trouble. He told you he's older, he's bitter, he's broken, he's pissed off. He said those words, man. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that that's what happened in 1 year in AEW, guys. 1 year in AEW. And this guy is the same CM Punk that was pissed off and bitter in WWE. He just was not happy. And he says he doesn't want to play games like a lot of the locker room wanted to play. And of course, he means the elite more than anybody. Not saying that some people didn't like Punk, right? Dax Harwood, Brody King just liked a comment from a fan that was like, I don't think CM Punk was wrong at all, and I think he makes a hero's welcome. And Brody King was like, yeah, man. So maybe Brody King, I'm not saying Punk didn't have people that didn't support him and like him, but a lot of the locker room did not. And there was a rift, and a lot of people looked at Phil Brooks like he was a poison, toxic to the locker room. And in the end, that's what happened, guys. When you're calling out people saying that they shouldn't even be managing a target, if you got a problem, come to my locker room, and it starts a brawl. And people like Chris Jericho, Mox, and Bryan Danielson have to step up and give a speech to the locker room and say, we're the new locker room leaders, and this shit's not going to happen anymore. Jericho, who does not like Phil Brooks, IRL does not like Phil Brooks, guys, and makes no bones about it, says that outright in interviews, and he is the locker room leader. So that's going to cause a rift if he ever did come back. But again, even if he does, his body is broke down. He's not happy anymore. If you're a fan of Phil Brooks, why would you want him back just to see him miserable and get hurt again? It's just not the right fit. Phil Brooks in wrestling, like a bad marriage that has to end in divorce. You never want to see a divorce, but it's time to go separate ways. Brooks is not happy in pro wrestling, man. Doesn't matter if it's WWE, AEW, he's just not happy anymore. So you have Rollins doubling down now. Now, a lot of people are going to be pissed off at Rollins again who are Punk fans or think that he should just not say anything about Punk. He was asked a question, and he just said, he did a lot for me. It pains me to even say this, but I wish he was in a better headspace. I don't think we're just not on the same page. I'm not a fan of his anymore. And like I said in my previous comments, I don't want him in the company. I saw what he did the last 6 to 7 years, or what he said. I saw what he did in the last year over there. That's what he said in the last time he was asked about Punk. We saw what he did. Are you shocked about my comments? He said everywhere he goes, it doesn't end well. And people get pissed at Rollins just because he was asked a question and he answered it. Is he supposed to just kiss Phil Brooks' ass? Would that make you love Seth Rollins more? It's not like he's just going out and talking shit about Brooks. That's not what happened. He was just asked about it. He said some nice things about Brooks, actually. And then he just said he doesn't think that this is it for Brooks anymore. BC actually agrees with Rollins on this. It's not shade to Punk at all. It's about his happiness. He knows wrestling is not it for him anymore, man. Or maybe Punk thinks he actually is above pro wrestling, which is not the case. But if he does think so, well, that's the root of a lot of these problems. So a lot of people are going to say, oh, he was in character again. Oh, it's obviously just a work. He wants to get people talking. Guys, listen to his words. This makes no sense to be a work. This makes no sense to just be in character. Of course, when Rollins does interviews these days, he is showing so many sides of his character. There's no question. But he's telling you, man, it pains me to say this. He did so much for me at the beginning of my career. But he's changed. He's a different person. I'm not a fan of his anymore. How is that not his real thoughts? How is that a work? Who is he working? He's not Phil Brooks. He's even a part of WWE. He's never going to be. He'll be back in WWE, probably to go in a Hall of Fame or something. But this is not a But Rollins was smart. He started off throwing Logan Paul in there to set up a work. That was smart. Rollins must have knew this was going to make the waves. So I'll give you what you want. I'll give you a real answer on how I feel about Punk again. Same thing. I'm not going to shy away from what I said last week. But if you're going to print this, I want you to fucking set up my Logan Paul match. Rollins was good on that, dude. Very smart, actually. Booker T also, I know some people are like, oh, Booker, just shut up. I like Booker. I really do. Sometimes he says some wild shit. There's nobody like Booker T, that's for sure. But his thoughts on Phil Brooks, again, BC actually shares the same sentiments. Booker T said this about CM Punk, and I quote, the footage when CM Punk exited that night, of course, All Out, he said, the brother looked tired, man. He said, I know he had been in a grueling match. He was bloodied, bruised, battered, torn, literally because he tore what? His triceps, I believe Booker says. How much longer can you push yourself at 45 in a company like AEW? That's my question more than anything. So Booker is also not just questioning what more he has to offer body-wise. He's just going to be more broken than he was in the first year in AEW. But he's saying, how much more? What is this dude coming back for? He's not popping a rating, by the way. He came back. The first week was a huge rating, and by the end of Punk walking away, they lost 300,000 to 400,000 viewers since. Back in playing around in 800 and 900,000 viewership. So it's not like he's popping a rating every time he's going out there either. By the way, Smackdown tonight, guys, Ronda Rousey is supposedly in Connecticut. What does that mean? They're at the Mohegan Sun Arena, maybe? Or maybe they're in Hartford, Connecticut. I think they have an XL Center. Or they could be at the Mohegan Sun Casino. They have an arena as well in Connecticut. Maybe that's where they're emanating from. But Ronda Rousey is said to be... Ronda Rousey said to be on the show tonight. One more thing about Seth Rollins and what he said about Logan Paul. This is a quote as well in that interview. I met my wife in this business. I have a child. I have a family. My wife has a college education because of this industry, and I want to give back to it. I want to leave it better than where I found it. And if he's not going to do that, then he can get the hell out. I don't have time for him. Mind your own business. That's on Logan Paul, guys. So... that's great. He did add, however, that I've got respect for the hustle, no respect for the selfishness. All right, so he's really trying to pump up this Logan Paul match. Again, BC's all about it, man. Absolutely all about it. And again, guys, you're going to hear a lot about this possibly in the next 24 hours. Board members George Barrios, Michelle Wilson, 2 minutes before I actually started recording, they announced their new venture with NBA's Carmelo Anthony, who spent several years as a New York Knick. They launched ISO S7 Sports Investment, a new venture looking to provide growth capital, targeting $50 million to $100 million per investment to our diversified portfolio of sports leagues, teams, emerging properties, and ancillary businesses in North America, Europe, and Pan-Asia. Also noted, the venture is looking to have access to over $700 million in capital funds. And I quote from this new venture, "We believe sports assets will continue to benefit from global macro tailwinds, and secular industry trends, driving significant, predictable, and stable growth," Barrios and Wilson explained. And I quote, "We are thrilled to partner with Carmelo Anthony, a trailblazer for athletes in investing, business development, and the like. Philanthropy is what they said. I'm sorry. There it is. I have to click back. A trailblazer for athletes in investing, business development, and philanthropy. We have a shared vision for how a new wave of diverse investors will identify global growth opportunities and impact the marketplace." It won't be long till Carmelo Anthony is on the board of directors. And Vince will buy out his own company, turn it private, and have more control than ever. The good news will be it will be private again. We'll get much more edgier television, which will hopefully lead to better storylines. The bad news would be VKM is still in control at his old age, and the old bastard has more pull and power than before. So we got to see how that all turns out, man. So that's what I got for you guys. I kept it here long enough, well over a half an hour. I don't have more than an hour, so I'm going to have to cut it there. BC will be right back with you over the next 24 hours to cover Smackdown. We'll see the new trajectory, the new path, right? It's a splinter path. The bulk of that story told at Royal Rumble. Now it's a splinter path. The story isn't totally done yet. Now we start a whole new fucking book. It's not a new chapter. That book ended. It's like fucking the Harry Potter fucking series of 8 books. At the Royal Rumble, the Bloodline and Sami Zayn, that book ended. But now we start a new book with the same concept. The story now takes a twist. And we start that up tonight, man. Bloodline, Sami Zayn. Where are we going to go with it? What's next for Bray Wyatt? A lot of you guys saying last week's segment didn't really produce anything. It was like fucking 8 seconds. We need more. We got to see what Bray Wyatt's doing tonight. How are you going to make us care about Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley for WrestleMania? You got to start that shit tonight. Is Ronda Rousey in the building? Where do you put her? You got to have those answers tonight. What's next for LA Knight? It's got to be big. It's got to be huge. It's got to be major. It's got to be massive. It's got to be immaculate. It's got to be tonight. A lot of answers to those questions. Big Smackdown. We're going to talk all about it tomorrow. For now, BC Top Guy. And I'm out. Check you.